Hi, everyone. I think we'll start since we have two lectures tonight. I'm Ann Rieselbach, the League's Program Director, and I'd like to welcome you to the first of 4 nights of lectures by this year's Architectural League Emerging Voices. Most of you know the program, but for a few that don't, each year the League selects 8 emerging practices through a juried invited portfolio competition. The award spotlights individuals and firms based in the United States, Canada, or Mexico with a distinct design voice and the potential to influence the disciplines of architecture, landscape design, and urbanism through their realized work, as well as through their accomplishments in community, taking into account everything from publications and design awards to their roles in academia and in advocacy. The jury looks for practices whose work represents the best of its kind, while also addressing larger issues within architecture, landscape, and the built environment, as I said. You can find further information about each firm on the League's recently redesigned, in fact, it just relaunched yesterday, website, as well as a series of additional features that are being developed on each firm. The first 2 are up, so keep coming back and you'll find more. And then after the lectures, the lecture videos will be up along with some other material. Before I introduce Jing Liu, who herself is a past winner and was one of this year's jurors, and she'll introduce tonight's speakers, on behalf of the League, I'd like to thank the organizations and individuals who make this series possible, beginning with Elise Jaffe and Jeffrey Brown for their ongoing enthusiasm and generous support, the Architects newspaper for another year of insightful coverage of each firm in their February-March issue. There are some print copies will be on the table as you leave if you didn't pick up one when you came in, and you also can visit their website and find all the features there. Additional support for the series is provided by public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with the City Council and by the Next Generation Fund of the Architectural League, which is an annual fund supported by a group of past emerging voices and League Prize winners. Architectural League programs as a whole are also supported in part by public funds from the New York State Council on the Arts with the support of Governor Andrew Cuomo and the New York State Legislature. Just a brief comment about how we choose emerging voices. Each program year begins with research by the League staff in concert with a big network of past emerging voices, journalists, curators, and others to compile a list of candidates who are invited to submit a sample of their work, a short CV, and importantly, a design philosophy that guides everything that they do. This year, the jury was expanded to include past emerging voices from across North America who reviewed the work from approximately 50 firms, and then a second-round jury in New York who selected 8 winners from a group of finalists who were invited to submit full portfolios for review. The first-round jury included Virginia Sanfratello, Sebastian Smalling, Vonnie Ix, Lola Shepard, Marcello Spina, Carlos Jimenez, and Marlon Blackwell, as well as members of the second-round jury, who are all based primarily in New York, Sunil Bald, Lisa Gray, Stella Betts, Paul Makowski, Tom Pfeiffer, Chris Reed, Billy Chen, and Jing, who will introduce tonight's speakers. Thanks.
Well, good evening. It's an honor to be introducing tonight's speaker, also the first pair of the 4 parts series. It's my second year to be part of this selection jury. And it's been incredibly rewarding because, as a past winner myself, you always wonder what really constitutes and what makes the voice heard, what really makes a voice emergent. From my personal experience, it's been surprisingly quite even once you are seeing this, 20-something portfolios amongst the group of people in the room, that the voice that really resonates are quite commonly agreed between all the jurors. I want to share a little bit of how I came to, during those jury sessions, to find Modus Studio and Future Green. Future Green Studio, I think I didn't know about. They were also part of the selection process last year. I did not know them before I entered the room, but I knew their work by just walking around New York City. I started to notice from a few years ago that there's this weird, moments that was joyful and it was very, it was surprising and it caught me in, by this kind of spontaneity and a kind of joyfulness around the city. Canopies suddenly have the hole, and you have wings that falls from above to under, and sometimes you see windows that suddenly get taken over by greens around them. So when last year when I first saw their portfolio, I just had a smile on my face. I'm like, oh, now I know what's happening, who are responsible for these moments that I keep encountering in the city. And with Modus Studio, I personally don't know Arkansas so well, as you can maybe imagine, as a foreigner. And, it was very difficult for me to judge in the beginning what their work, how they played into the context of the Arkansas architecture kind of discipline. But then the more I look at their trajectory and history, they started in 2008, the same moment that we started our office. Although we wanted emergent voice earlier, but admittingly, they have achieved much more buildings than we did. and they're built with consistencies. And I remember one of the jury, I don't remember who it was, said, wow, these guys are just quietly like a tornado taking over Arkansas. And that's really what they did, I think. I would like to maybe read two sentences from their philosophy that they submitted, that after kind of encountering their work, it really resonated. From Future Green Studio, they said, as careful observers and good listeners, our approach to the design process begins with detailed observation of what's already happening on that site and a close communication with clients and communities. In that way, we unearth inherent value and beauty. And from Modus Studio, they say that we believe that through observation, the world reveals itself as an inspirational primer for design and an unwritten instruction manual for living. Both of them resonated with me and reminded me of this phrase by Henri Lafleur in 1931, in which, in a book that he published called La Conscious Mystery, says, how are we to proceed in order to effect a necessary rehabilitation of the mystified consciousness? By starting with the portrait of the most prosaic of men in his everyday life. I think what I saw in both of this studio's work was a quiet but a revolutionary moment that is very much convincing and joyful, but also a believer in this unsettling time. Let's face it, we're living in a very divisive moment. There are tensions between different ideologies, cultures, genders, local and the global. They exist, contradictions and tensions, but there's also a wholly new possibilities for new narratives. And from the hubris of the human act, I feel that the two of them showed us really this possibility of a quiet revolution. And I would like to end my introduction with one of my favorite quotes from Mary Shelley, who said, "Invention, it must be humbly admitted, does not exist in void, but does not consist in creating out of the void, but out of chaos." So without further ado, I would like to hear how they do it from these two winners.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jing, for the introduction, and thank you to the League and everyone who has been part of allowing us to get to this point to kind of come up here and share the work that Modus Studio has been doing and the recognition that comes with it. We really are excited to be here and really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today. So Modus Studio, I'm here with my two partners, Josh Siebert and Jason Wright, and my wife, Leanne Baribeau, is also an architect that works with us. And we're really excited to kind of share. This is Think, Make, Do is sort of the working title here, and hopefully through the course of this you'll understand why. So a very kind of bastardized haiku of, we live on the earth, bisected by our nature with sky above us, and we build. And this image from obviously an agricultural scenario, pastoral landscape in northwest Arkansas, which is really powerful to us because this is sort of the constantly repeating theme in some of the landscapes we see, and then how we deal with that in terms of the cities that we're working in and the rural landscapes as well. And we're sort of always aware that all living things are sort of seeking good space. You know, even this jackass loves to find the shelter and shade that he can, and we find that endearing along the way. We're very much like to reflect on how things slowly go back to the earth and what that means as man and nature are sort of in conflict, and how time and technology really have to merge in some way, shape, or form. And so you take this historical, is that showing up? Historical connection, but we're really interested in sort of this thin line of the electricity that finds its way between the gap and these beautiful buildings. Along the way, we kind of feel like you first must learn the little instructions that are given to you this in sort of an unwritten way, but these are the things that sort of teach you and progress you through your thought process, perhaps even as a child, right? To the increasingly more complex, more technical nature of what we do every day. We like to acknowledge or admire the way man and nature collide. And there's sort of these brilliant moments that occur in the landscape when sort of the farm and technology and people come together that really sort of inspire us in a daily way. There are also some very absurd moments that happen when man and nature and technology merge. And quite frankly, I don't know which is more absurd, this supposed cell phone tower that's supposed to look like a tree, or the 3-story roof on this McMansion. And this is in Fayetteville. This is where we're from. This is where we live and work and what we fight against, I feel like, on a daily basis. But we truly can marvel at, arguably one of the most romantic mergers of man and nature in this example of meteoric Greece. And we don't exactly have this in northwest Arkansas, in Fayetteville, but we do have this, and we think this is kind of a good place to start. So a little bit of orientation. This is Arkansas. I know it's sort of in the middle, in the south. In the south. We're kind of in the top left corner here. This, as represented by this puzzle, we have cotton apparently, and lakes, and chickens, and apples, all of which are correct, but these are all in the wrong spot on this map. So here, this image, they got the mountains right in the top left corner, northwest corner, with chickens, pine trees. We've got all these things. Diamonds. Did you know we have a diamond mine? We do. They pull diamonds out all the time. They're not very big. Lizards, apparently. We have lizards, but we're not known for lizards. Fiddles. Yes. Thank you, puzzle. Probably Melissa and Doug for pointing out that we play music. Diamonds again, but most interestingly, the Ascend of Oklahoma is right up against this. So just a little wayfinding orientation for you. This is the state of Arkansas. Top left corner, as I mentioned, is northwest Arkansas, Fayetteville, our home, and where much of our work is located. Arkansas is a really beautiful place from a topography and geology point of view, from the deltas to the Ozarks in the northwest corner where we're located. So to dive into the work a little bit, this is in 2008 where we started. This is Green Forest Middle School. This is the first project. My partner Josh and I started working out of our home studio almost 10 years ago, and had a really unique opportunity to go to a rural campus for a public school and create a new middle school. They had been located within, the middle school itself had actually been happening in temporary buildings for about 15 years, which included trailers that are full of formaldehyde and other awful things. And so this was the site that was given to us. And they sort of just wanted to fill it in with a one-story building and completely occupy this entire common park area. And what we decided in thinking about that merger between landscape and sky was that we could do a whole lot more with a two-story proposal, preserve space out front, create a backdrop. And for us, that began by studying the context of the community itself, which, by the way, my partner Josh is from, so this was a great opportunity to work in his own alma mater. But these sort of agricultural and snippets of red that sort of happen on the campus and in the community itself. And as you can see in the top left, the sketch kind of showcasing the two-story concept that we convinced them, which is, this is rural Arkansas, like a two-story building with an elevator in a public school is like insane to them. But we wanted to preserve that front porch feel and create a backdrop for the community, because if you don't realize that, in a rural place like Arkansas, in a rural community, the single largest investment that'll happen by the community is the public school. It's the thing that everybody can rally around. So this is really important to us to maintain the presence of this. So in the site plan, you can see we really worked hard to preserve the sort of the forecourt that became, it is the event space within the community. And I should say here too, I'm going to show like snippets of 2 projects, but in the last 10 years, we've actually completed 10 projects on this campus. So our challenge was that what we're going to do first and foremost, starting our practice, is we're going to, and we only have the budget that we're given, we're going to work in the same material palette that every other school is being built in, but try to make that sing, try to make that something meaningful for the largest, the single largest investment this community would make. And so for us, again, the idea of a backdrop for pep rallies, a 16-foot cantilever overhang to really create a space outdoors that could be used by the entire campus in the heart of the campus. We always say, we kind of have a saying in the office, 8, 9, 13, 8 hours a day, 9 months a year, 13 years of your life you spend in a school, in a public school, or other school. And that's a long time, and that's really important. If you think about that amount of time that children spend in a facility that you design, it should be inspirational and about education, not like a prison and sad. That's the opposite of what we think. So we really feel like serving, being able to provide our architecture to a lot of rural communities that are incredibly underserved, particularly in rural areas, with good buildings, with a lot of natural light and a lot of inspirational spaces for learning is really important to our philosophy. And so this becomes a really important aspect as we move from the macro scale and the planning down to the detail level, even, that we can always come up with more, we can always do better, we can always, with the same budget, we can provide more and unique moments that hopefully will be memorable to children. And then this project led to a renovation to the athletics complex, seen in the backdrop here of this image, which really gave us, which again, by the way, if you don't know, like rural Arkansas, like football is like what everybody rallies behind, right, at the local school. And so this was a great opportunity to provide the same kind of energy and thought into right adjacent to our middle school, and really, again, further advance this rural community and this campus that we can continue to work on, which is very meaningful to us. Right after that, we had the opportunity to work on our first multifamily project. We had 0 multifamily experience. Also, we had 0 middle school experience, I should add. But we really felt like that not having preconceived notions and always questioning, asking the right questions along the way will yield great results. And so this was the model unit of these apartments that we renovated. I mean, I want to live there. I mean, it looks fantastic. And this is the existing structures. There are 4 buildings located on these few acres sort of in the heart of Fayetteville. Very simple construction, but good construction, good bones. Concrete, precast concrete, cinder block. Great palette for investigating what the options are. And sort of simultaneously along the way through all these rural trips we're making to Green Forest and other rural school districts, we come across images like these, where again the idea of like buildings going back to the earth, and what happens when those two things collide. And this sort of becomes a precedent for how we think about the process of design, So we're taking very simple buildings and thinking about how can we introduce landscape and make a more sustainable place, and really instill the idea of community into an apartment complex, which is sort of an unheard of thing in Arkansas, believe it or not. So this image of the 4 buildings, this is as completed. Then the plan, kind of one of our big opportunities or goals here was to really take advantage of the interstitial spaces between buildings and carve out new spaces that became outdoor spaces where hopefully people could connect and actually not just go from your car to your apartment, but actually come outside and interact. And that included community gardens, a veiled system, and a green screen along the western edge, which was pretty harsh in July and August and even September. And developed a kit of parts, ways to get up on the roof, take advantage of cities. And so a very simple kit of parts of cedar and steel that would get people up. We would also inserted cisterns and then create private spaces outside. And so this is one of those interstitial spaces that became a community garden. You can see the 24-foot tall, 6-foot diameter galvanized cistern. So half the water from each roof dumps into that, and then that feeds the community garden space. And this stuff works great. It functions as simple, low-tech solutions that we really like. Also, the point of this project, and thankfully we had a great client who we wanted to pursue LEED. It's one of the first. So this was actually the first LEED for Homes multifamily platinum project in the state of Arkansas. And so we created this graphic to sort of speak to all of the sustainable features that we're adding from solar water heating to the rainwater harvesting, green roofs, getting views, natural light, et cetera. And so this project really became sort of a game changer in Fayetteville as how to deal with some of this old stock that could take a renovation and have the good bones, rejuvenated into modern living. This also gave us an opportunity in 2010. Our partner Jason Wright came on board and we started Modus Shop, which is the fabrication side of, so we have studio and shop. And this gave us the opportunity to develop the kit of parts and actually fabricate and install onto the project. And so we started very humbly from Jason's garage at his house and fabricated these frames that then became the kit of parts that were just an armature that attached to these buildings to change the architecture. So just a few more images of kind of the veiling of the low-tech, simple solution of just some galvanized cable and letting some purple hyacinth bean grow up. So you get the shade is provided by the time that the hot sun comes around in summer. And we also wanted to allow the entire community to get up to the roof and capture some of the views to the city and downtown beyond. And great, like I said, fantastic clients, but there was one member of the client group that said, there's no way in hell we're gonna put stairs that go to the roof on this thing. I mean, I think that's a great idea, but there's just no way it's gonna happen. And luckily we had other partners and other clients who really supported that idea. And we have 14 different roof decks and then one giant public one. So it just goes to show that if the idea is good enough and you just sort of keep hammering it and keep getting the cost where it makes sense, that that can really come through. And so again, the idea of creating community spaces where previously there was a pool, the pool existed before, but no one wanted to go there. You probably saw the image with a terrible fence around it. But creating spaces that are really meaningful and there are opportunities for interaction between people. And then on the interiors, just keeping them clean and simple. We came up with another low-tech solution here. This is one piece of millwork in the middle of the studio space. It sits on a really dumb Lazy Susan, and the TV is able to rotate 180 degrees, so it can go from the living room to the kitchen to the bedroom. And you can have one TV that's mounted for you when you arrive. And then we've sort of made this multivalent millwork piece that's a desk and shelving and all that. So just some real simple solutions to create something great out of otherwise a 580 square foot apartment. We also had the opportunity to take the architecture and lead that into the branding. So we actually did the graphic design and kind of logo making and worked through the entire branding on the project, which is a really great opportunity to have the architecture and design and the philosophy influence ultimately what the end product is. And so it was really exciting to kind of work on this and then help produce these brochures that really speak to all the sustainable features that were available at the project. Okay, so then now I'm kind of jumping through and going to show you very quickly a lot of different scales and typologies of work that we take on at Modus Studio. So you've seen K through 12 work, you've seen multifamily, which we've done in the last 6 years. I think we've done like almost 2,000 units that are either constructed or under construction. But we also work at the scale of the custom home, which if you've ever done that, you know what a challenge that can be. Working on homes, but we really love beautiful site, typical Ozark section, the opportunity to really get down in the site, turn over the rocks, so to speak, and see what lies beneath. Great little neighborhood with anywhere from like 3 to 5 acre lots, great opportunity, but it's surrounded by McMansions that have been developed along the way. And so the clients really are like, we want to push away from the road. We don't want to be like that, but we want to be part of this neighborhood in this location because it suits us. So for us, it was like, great, let's study what this is. So we're all about the vernacular and the proportion and the form making, as opposed to the typical plan from the book McMansion that often pops up with bad proportions in Northwest Arkansas. And so we began the process sketching, studying, thinking about how the spaces in between and what the form making would be. We had some covenants we had to meet in terms of roof pitch and some materials we had to meet, but how can we take all those constraints and make that into something that's really, really beautiful and intriguing and what the client's looking for. So we take the basic program, we think about splitting that, because thinking about the dog trot, which is a traditional vernacular building with open space in between, stacking the bedrooms, rotating that to create a bridge for the 4 bedrooms for the 4 kids, and ultimately, so the bridge of the bedrooms connects the living and the garage and results in this. So we made a heavy timber bridge structure spanning between the garage and the living spaces. Obviously, the plan, very simple, formal, push down the hill away from the upfront, useless front porch that often occurs in the McMansion, and really wanted to create on this kind of Ozark cross-section down to the ravine a really great outdoor space that become the entry and the daily experience of the user coming home from the garage is the same as the daily experience of a guest that would arrive at a house. So often the front door is unused because you enter through the garage every day, and we really wanted to investigate how can that daily experience of the user coming home be as fantastic as the guest. And that's really important in a lot of our work to think that way through a custom home. So it results like this. We also created sort of this constellation lighting that really made that outdoor space sing and helped continue the idea of the indoor-outdoor connection of the redwood-clad bridge with the main interior spaces. And obviously the continuation of the terracing of the landscape down to the ravine. Created these skylights that allowed, again the continuation of the idea of the interior and the exterior to really work together. And so the idea of the bridge is reinforced, even though it may only be spanning so far. The conceptually extends all the way across the kitchen and the upstairs where the trusses are exposed. So in the circulation space, in the stairs, as well as even in the children's rooms and the bathrooms, the truss is exposed and mirrors are mounted to it. And so it's a constant reminder of the construction typology. Okay, moving on to university work, which is something that we also have had the opportunity, over through the opportunity of building trust with our local university, our alma mater. This project, Art and Design District Sculpture Studios. So this is a very unique project, much needed space by the University Art Department in a unique location with existing structures that obviously you can see the challenges inherent to potentially renovating and reusing these structures. Great interiors to start with. So this is an overall site plan. So the large area on the left here is the University of Arkansas main campus. Where number 6 is highlighted is this sort of remote destination that's becoming the art and design district for the campus. And the thing that's interesting here is that we're sort of divorced from some of the norms that you would find on the main campus in a much more industrial area. And so that combined with a modest budget, how do you take the pre-engineered metal building bones and transform that into something that is a great space for the sculpture studio? So a series of diagrams that talk about the existing site. You can see the 3 buildings. One of them must go away, and we extended that structure as shown here. This is, again, a pre-engineered metal building, so we're just using the basic materials that we can afford within the budget, a pre-engineered metal building, metal panel, perforation, creating efficient double-loaded corridors and expanding those on the ends for entry and light, and refine the corridor for efficiency and gallery spaces, ultimately with shops located on the north side and studios along the trail. And one thing I didn't mention on the aerial is that the greenway, which we have an extensive greenway system, trail system in northwest Arkansas, but part of it runs right next to this building, so we really wanted that to be the public open side, this campus. And so then using the basic section of the pre-engineered metal building, nothing fancy or romantic about that, but opportunities within the basic structural system to really create double height spaces that will allow multiple interaction from one floor to another and provide all the program needed for the project. So obviously you can see the existing structure and the extension of that, and ultimately where we were able to land, again, just using the basic material components that you'd find in any pre-engineered metal building, but really putting those together in a way that makes them sing and really a new gravity or new destination for the School of Art in particular. With, you can see the trail running out to the side here. Obviously, we have interesting site, lots of drainage and topography to deal with. It's essentially been industrial, and we're trying to create this into a new art and design district. So this is really the cornerstone first building to come online here. Obviously, celebrating the way that people move up and down through the building, creating double height spaces, adjacencies, and form that we can sneak out of the basic form making of a pre-engineered metal building. And the relationship and context, which actually this building is now gone and a new building's coming online in this district. But we also wanted to create spaces that could be multivalent and used. There can be opportunities for students to pin up art and use this as part of the canvas, an exterior porch that can be part of that canvas within the studio and for their work. Some fantastic maker spaces within this, a lot of different labs and studios, a lot of great natural light. And these are spaces that get messy and they have to be durable, but also exemplify the work that's being done. And so a very simple palette. Spaces for collaboration, obviously. And then sort of the meat and potatoes of the whole thing is how do these labs and studios and shops really come together and function so that the students can do what they need to do for this much needed program. And then gallery spaces as well. So how do we create that? Create a process within the building that can be exemplified as people visit this off of the trail or for various events. And the front porch also being, all of the spaces really have to be functional and considered as part of the lab or part of the classroom or the studio. Let the foundry be on. Oop, final image. So shifting gears a little bit, this is another university project, but it's located in Hot Springs, Arkansas, which is sort of the southwestern corner of the state. It's on a peninsula. It's a beautiful, beautiful, it's Garvin Woodland Gardens, and it's owned by the university and run by the university. And we had this opportunity to work on a treehouse. So actually, we interviewed for this project, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. We did not receive the project. They got involved in the project and were not happy with the results they were seeing. In the meantime, we interviewed and got another project, and they were so happy with what we're doing on that project, but they needed to put it on hold. They said, well, hey, why don't we figure out how to get you guys involved with the treehouse, because we're not really happy with what we're seeing. And we said, yeah, that would be great. We wanted it in the first place, and we would love to work with you and continue. I mean, this is an opportunity to make a treehouse within a children's garden space. And so this is the actual space, and this is an existing bridge that sort of winds around the entire place. But the whole thing is orchestrated with caves and rocks so that children can come to this location and just run free and get the energy out. But we also wanted to bring in an educational component, and that's really where the treehouse comes into play. It's just a few more images of sort of the nature and the grit of the site, really natural beauty that exists there, and then you can see the existing bridge walkway that moves around. So we went through a lot of iterations. Keep in mind, we were the second team coming on board here, and so through the process, we came up with a lot of different ideas because we felt like, again, there are no preconceived notions. We want to shed away any idea of getting away from anything that they'd seen before. And so we went through a very rigorous process of a lot of different concepts and ideas. And ultimately, what they wanted to see was something that had the essence of floating, not actually part of a tree, not necessarily supported by a tree, but really something amorphic that could be found in really a mysterious object in the tree space. And so working through this, this is sort of the path you would normally take on that bridge that exists in the site, and we sort of identified the small copse of trees that we could work around, took the basic program, started to bend it based on the forces of the trees and the site and the movement of this path, and ultimately arrived at this basic plan shape that moves in between these 4 impressive trees, and then you enter along the back. And so it's sort of the overall site plan. We actually did the master planning for 3 different tree houses that hopefully will come on later, but ours is the one in the center that really, the educational component is about trees and entomology, with the idea that ornithology and entomology would come on later as different treehouse themes. And so, so these are the images that we've produced. This project is under construction right now. But again, the idea was to really create something that has a natural connection. So it has like 113 individual fins that are made of wood with a steel frame, and you can see that you're up in the trees when you make the connection to the treehouse itself. Just various spaces, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about this end, which is totally different now and for the better. But you can see how this floats within the main children's garden space. A very amorphic shape. What is it? Is it a tree shark? Is it a weird squirrel? We don't know, but we love it. And so the idea of mystery and excitement and the idea that you can move in the round and see this and then you want to go there. So that became really an important part of developing this. And then it's sort of a 3-story space that children can move up and down through. Stairs, ladders, climbing, the fins, they're spaced close enough apart. Don't worry, they're going to be okay. And so really the whole idea about that is about being up in the trees and finding and perfecting views to acknowledge an educational component, but then also just viewing out and viewing back to the treescape and to the bridgescape, and really something exciting that various programs can go on, and a lot of different little follies and educational components that will happen inside the treehouse. And so this screen on the end, as represented here, is a wood screen. Really became a very different animal in this whole process. And so this is sort of a CAT scan of sections. We've actually drawn all 113 fins, so they can be fabricated for this project. And then looking at the very last fin, so to speak, this Venetian screen that we've been developing is inspired by leaves, obviously, from the trees, right? And so we went through a series of diagrams and drawings and renderings to understand what the screen would be like. And through a series of tests and mock-ups and developing we have a laser cutter, and so we're sort of fabricating these mock-ups and working back and forth with the client on what the screen could be and should be relative to the pattern of sort of a bug-eaten leaf, I should say. And so then we started getting into other models, full-scale detail mock-ups. This is Jason holding a piece he'd recently cut out for a full-scale mock-up. And then ultimately Modus Shop took on the fabrication of this and will be installing this in about 2 weeks down on the treehouse itself. So we put this on our CNC, cutting this out with the plasma cutter and really taking this from the idea to the concept and able to control every aspect of the detail. This is it laying out in our shop floor, welding it up, compiling it, putting it together. Really incredible detail and texture to it, along with the structure innate, but really modeled off the structure of a leaf itself. And this sort of inside our shop, which is right next to our studio, which you'll see here in a minute. And so this is it under construction right here. Fins, mock-up fins going up, the steel floating out into the tree space here. And you can sort of see the end here. This is where the Venetian screen will go. And we're really excited about that. It's been a long time in the coming, and it's going to be I think, a really great space. And addition to sort of the Arkansas and the Garvin Woodland Gardens landscape. Okay, so this is Stadium Drive Residence Halls. This is a new project, a new residence hall, 2 residence halls actually on the University of Arkansas campus. And we partnered with Lears Weinzapfel and Associates out of Boston, as well as Mackie Mitchell Architects out of St. Louis, and went after this project here at the university. And you can sort of see from this image, this is the the main campus core. Old Main here is the main historic building, the original building on the campus. And then we're sort of down in the Athletic Valley. So we're really challenged here with the site location of creating a sense of gravity and place through this project, because ideally people, students want to live up on the hill on the campus core. But this is the site available to us with some incredible, we believe, incredible opportunities. And so part of the thinking along the way was, well, what if we could give students the feeling of a cabin in the woods? Like if that's what you could go home to every day, how intriguing would that be? How would that resonate with the sort of the residential feel that needs to exist in campus housing, as opposed to the sort of, concrete block existence that often you find in old dorms. So we love that idea, and we really started investigating and thinking about the nature of wood, which is a material we work with all the time, as you've seen evidence of some of this work. But we also, part of the program of this project was start to think about advanced timber technology, or mass timber, which I'm sure you, following the architectural world right now, there's a lot of discussion about this. And so that was sort of a premise of the project as well. But as we started thinking about spaces and what is the effect of wood and in time and the organic material qualities, and those are sort of some precedents that came to mind. And then we really, as we started developing a plan, even in just sketch form, we really wanted to start to think about some of the main spaces that students would interact with on a daily basis, becoming, well, what is the nature of those spaces? How could wood be something that reminds them that that cabin in the woods, and have an organic and warm feel to it throughout the spaces? So we sort of a diagram that we created to sort of think about how those might interact. So ultimately, the plan is we have the Bud Walton Arena, the basketball arena here, existing dorms here that are now under a different renovation. But really wanted to occupy the site and really allow the landscape to go through. We're working with Olin out of Philadelphia on this project, fantastic landscape architects that have really allowed us to take this site, which has 20 feet of fall across it because we're in the Ozarks, our campus is on a hill, and really allow the landscape to thread through. And so basically, this kind of exemplifies the way we're allowed to get the landscape to move through the space. 2 buildings dock on what we affectionately call the cabin here. And then there's an entire living learning community component to this, maker spaces, creative spaces, performing spaces. And all of this is wrapped around these courtyards and preservation of existing trees that are on the campus. So ultimately what we've landed on and are excited about in this project, this will be an advanced timber technology using mass timber and CLT construction. It's actually going to be the first in the United States that's a university campus life project, 5 stories. And so these images just speak to the components of the heavy timber and the CLT, which we're using as flooring, the floor spans in this project. And then a quick little animation of that. So it's really exciting that we're able to expose this as part, this is exposed throughout the project, even through the rooms that students will be in and through all the primary spaces, allowing the structure and the use of, cladding material that in natural cypress from the state of Arkansas that becomes kind of the primary finish and theme for the project. And the CLT, I think, starts to deliver 1st of April, so we're extremely excited to see this happen. And unfortunately, all the CLT and mass timber is actually coming from Austria, but in Arkansas, we have an incredible amount of forest, so we're really hoping that this project becomes like the spark for how do we take southern yellow pine and do this with the project, with the material that we have so much of in the state. So it's a fairly simple building, repetitive in terms of the rooms, the dorms. It's clad in metal panel and brick. But again, some great landscape spaces that interact throughout with, this is sort of the cabin space here. Perceive the main entry, you move under and through the building. The main cabin space, it's very expressive in the wood structure. Hammocking, it's a really big deal. I didn't know it was a verb until recently, hammocking. The hearth room, which again, this is all Arkansas cypress that all this will be clad in, which is great. A performing arts space, again, dealing with the topography, 20 feet of change across the site. Maker spaces, the garage doors that will roll up, and really flexible studio spaces that are the anchor of the living learning community. And then, to me, this is like this is the best thing, right? That students get to live in a room that the CLT is exposed as the ceiling, the heavy timbers go through. I mean, how great is that? You get a taller ceiling space, like 10 feet plus, and you get wood as the expression as opposed to drywall or concrete block. It's something that's really great about the structural system. And then obviously the nighttime potential activity. Okay, so coming sort of to the end, coming to where we work. Talked a lot about thinking in our process, making, shown that in terms of fabrication, and this is sort of where it culminates in the do. Because 15 Church and 200 Center, this is a building that we purchased in late 2012 and ultimately renovated into our own space. And this is actually now a barbershop space that's part of our building, our mixed-use building. And so this was the beautiful thing that we found and bought. Many people questioned us. Our original office was on the 5th floor, about right there of this tall building, which is like the most urban, cool, tall office building in Fayetteville. But we kept kind of looking down this direction. You can see the university and beyond. We kept looking down to this building, thinking, man, if we could have our own, like our studio next to, our shop next to our studio, we could have this great space and we own it and do what we want with it. And so we developed a design scheme to renovate this building. It's like an early 1950s building. It was a loading dock for an electrical co-op, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. But we developed this entire, the scheme of how we're going to screen it, the idea of a charred cypress rain screen, and really thought through these components. We'd already done the Platinum Eco-Modern Flats project, and we really thought, well, we want our own shop and studio to exemplify our sustainability goals and efforts. And so we actually just recently had our ceremony. This is the only LEED Platinum project in the state of Arkansas last year. And we just had the plaque ceremony and all that. I'm really excited about it. So this is the building as it is now. We actually added the second floor, which is an apartment, and with the charred cypress rain screen. This is our studio here on the left, our partner Specialized Real Estate Group that we bought the building with, that we did the Eco-Modern Flats and a lot of our multifamily projects with. But we had the opportunity here to develop with them and really invest in our place and put our money where our mouth is. And this really became an important aspect to us. And then we wanted to do this charred cypress rain screen, so we built a forge. And we put it on a conveyor system with the little spout that puts it out at the end, and set all this up so that we could actually get the cypress from the state of Arkansas, run it through the forge that we fabricated, and ultimately clad our building in that, which provides shade and obviously aesthetic for our building, which we're very, very happy with. And so a few of the interior spaces, we added skylights, solar tubes inside, so hopefully the lights are off most of the time, which we love. We don't like to be oppressed by fluorescents and LEDs. We like natural light. This is our space here, our main conference. You can see the section of the old loading dock here. Obviously lots of steel. We love to fabricate and work in steel, but a very open studio space, as you can see. And then that's the door that goes out to our shop, which is right next to us. And you can actually see a model that we built of the residence halls that are under construction now. And this is our shop space. It's a modest 2,000 square foot space that we get. It's incredible, the amount of work that comes out of that small of a space and has to constantly shift and change. And so we've done a series of projects that are for either the projects that are in the studio or projects that just come to us. For instance, a client came to us and said, I want to change my 1980 BMW, and I want to take the sidecar off and change it into kombucha dispensing sidecar. And we said, we can do that. A client that came in and said, I want to turn this Sprinter van into this trekking vehicle that I'm going to drive around the U.S. for the next year and a half. All right, we'll do it. No one else will. And so from that to a lot of different little widgets and prototypes along the way, even to we actually have an internal competition every solstice. And equinox that we allow the whole studio, we come up with a premise, an idea, everybody it's a design competition in the office. We bring in outside jurors and we put a theme, for instance, say make a fire pit. And this is going to be a fire pit's going to be the goal for this time. What are the designs? Have people come in and judge it. The winner then goes into like a prototyping process. And so we actually came up with the Modus box, and it actually won the Garden and Gun. Recent awards in Garden and Gun. You might have seen this. These are for sale if you want to buy one. although we're way behind in production, I'll be honest with you. But so these little widgets that we've come up with, including a bike clip, so we came up with a way to showcase beautiful bicycles inside apartments or otherwise, and so then we get to sell these to some of the multifamily projects we're working on, which is really fun. But the idea is that people in the studio and people in the shop, you know, there's a whole thinking, making philosophy that we're able to underscore through competition, through design, through sort of celebrating that process and getting your hands dirty, which allows us to then create some really beautiful and craft some beautiful things that we're quite proud of. And so again, our own little space, our little pocket park with our own little cistern. This becomes a great backdrop for us and a great community space for us. So we open up our shop a few times a year, and we host Pechakucha events, invite all kinds of outside speakers, and we provide all the beer and pizza, and people love it. We get like 200 and 250 attendance every time. We host in our studio a lot of we have a lot of collaborations with local artists and their students, and obviously the University of Arkansas, which is our alma mater. And really, you know, our idea is to be on the ground and be part of the community and really have facility that we can open up to others to come in and be part of the conversation. And that became really important to us. And so these are some of those events that we're able to put on here at our studio, which we're really excited about. So then this project at 15 Church led us to actually purchase the building next to us, which this was its existing condition, a really sad corner in downtown Fayetteville. We really want to create a new front porch for the coffee shop, so we took this on and programmed this so that we could bring in a local coffee family that has like a coffee empire in Fayetteville. And so now this front porch exists on the corner of downtown. Again, that's EJ Ball. That's the old building we were in, looking down on this space. Beer, coffee, great things. Even a little tech company is in there. And it really gave us the opportunity, again, to put our money where our mouth is and develop in our own place and try to make it better. And so in closing, I'll just say, which I know it's a lot and very fast, but I think what you realize through this process, like I said, we've almost coming up on 10 years because we started in 2008, and you realize that what matters most are people, and the people that you work with on a daily basis, the people who allow all of this work to happen. I only get to show a little bit, but we have like 75 completely built projects, many on the boards, I think 10 under construction right now, various scales from custom homes to large multifamily projects to large university projects. And ultimately, you realize being part of the community, being part of where you are, and really connecting with people, whether they're clients or the people you work with on a daily basis, become the impetus for everything that you do. It's not about me, it's about us at Modus. Cheers.